technology play for you? And do you get distracted easily? Do you feel like you ought to be writing in other forms because readers want sort of more of you in other ways?
No, I mean, I love technology. I have thanked Google in my first book. I mean, I wrote Q&A in just 2 months. And the reason I could do that was because of Google. Because imagine, I was researching about Dharavi. I had never been to Dharavi. That's where my character was supposed to be residing. So I read a couple of books on Dharavi, but then eventually it was Google. You go to Google, your virtual map comes up, you can go to that particular place, and because of Google, I could do the book in 2 months. Because otherwise, if I had to sit in a library, take out 20 books, then find that book does not have what I need. Google, 1 million hits come up, and yes, you still have to sift through some of them, but eventually you do get what you want. And some people say that that's Google realism, but even Google realism is a form of realism. I mean, it's not as if that Google is inventing a street map or something like that. It's a real street view and it's a real place, and it's just that you're getting it on the internet rather than having to go physically to that particular place. So I'm all for technology, but I do agree with you. Facebook and Twitter can be huge distractions. I mean, I did not want to get on Facebook at all, and then my wife told me that somebody is on Facebook masquerading as you, and your friends are asking that why aren't you responding? So I said, my God. So then we found out there was a spotter who was pretending to be a classroom, so I had to get on Facebook just to sort of claim that domain is mine, kind of a thing. But I mean, I look at my Facebook account like once in 10 days, kind of a thing. Twitter, I came on as a diplomat. I need to know what is social media and things like that. But I have like maybe 72 followers and things like that. So it's not something that I engage with, but it's good just to know what the technology is and just to understand what's it all about. But for some other writers, I mean, that is the thing. They say that, in fact, they would twist Sadie Smith's thing to say, these days, book is 5% writing and 95% marketing.
A lot of that is done on the internet. You do know now you're going to get a whole lot of friend requests now that you said you are on Facebook. Akhil, what about you?
I only write sort of fiction, short stories that are stories that are published in magazines versus put up on the internet. And I do that partially because, in terms of, it's just much more useful to my career. So I could put these things up on the internet, but then nobody's going to pay me. So why do it? And it's not going to help me in any meaningful way. The internet is tremendously distracting. The way I tend to write is I have a certain goal of hours that I will be sitting before my computer, and I have a stopwatch. And my goal is, I don't actually have to write anything, I just have to be sitting in front of my computer. So I turn, and every time I answer the phone or if I check my email, I stop the stopwatch. And if you do that for 5 hours a day, you're going to generate a lot of pages. The other thing is, I sort of feel I know too many things in a surface sort of way. I have too many acquaintances in my life. Like what I need are friends, and what I need are people that I care about. And I feel the same way about the work that I do. I will do things casually, but I would like to spend more of my life sort of committed to things and loving things and devoted to things. And so for me only, and I speak just from my own personal preferences, I don't have any interest in tweeting or Facebooking, and I'm on Facebook. Please do not send Facebook friend requests. I never checked my Facebook, and I've never posted anything on it. It's just not. I'm not interested in things that are done easily. I'm interested in the things that take a lot of time. I have a friend who is a journalist who talks about young reporters saying that their research that they do is Googling. And he said, but if it's already up, then it doesn't count as research. Research is when you go and find something. that's just been my experience and my preferences.
Thank you. Yours and Jonathan Franzen's, apparently, because he talks about how he has to shut out the world, he does not like any outside connection, and actually has to sit in a room with no windows and a darkened room and write. So that's really amazing. I don't know, it would be hard for me to do. Akhil, I have another question for you. I was reading an interview with you in which you said, and I'm quoting you here, fiction for me is about asking what kind of good can I do in the world. Fiction does good in the world. And it's sort of connected, and you said, I think fiction is a great good. And it's sort of connected with this, I attended a talk by Anne Patchett at the Town Hall in Seattle about a couple of weeks ago, in which she was saying that writers, she says, you cannot be a good writer unless you are a good human being. And for me that was fascinating because I have met a lot of writers that are awful human beings, right? So people wonder about that, and I was wondering if you could speak to that. You know, who are you? And I know that you all think you are good, right? We all think we are good, but who are you and what are some of those things? Do you think that you need to be good, or is it just writing, doing good in the world? And I'll let them respond and we'll come to the originator of that comment. So, yeah.
What was the question?
Oh, do you feel, right, do you need to be a good, do you think that writing does good in the world and that you have to be a good person in order to be a good writer, or is it something else?
No, definitely. I mean, not because so many guys who write are like absolute jerks, you know. So no, I don't think that's a big prerequisite. It also depends on what kind. I mean, I think sometimes writing is about making up things, right? So I think sometimes writers make themselves up. You know, they make themselves up as these saintly, morally upright kind of people, when actually they're not that kind of. So it's like a thing they've created, and it's that. So the best fictional character is like themselves, you know. So and yeah, it's like Borat actually, but I much prefer Borat to the other kinds of people. That's the thing. So I think sometimes they're pretending to be good, but they can be jackasses as well, like anybody else.
I had a student once come to me and he'd written this beautiful love letter with, he was trying to keep his girlfriend from leaving him, and he'd written this beautiful love letter. He said, will you read me and tell me what you think of it? And I said, this is beautiful, and this is just wonderful. Do you actually mean this? And he thought about that and said, actually, no, I don't. So the writing sort of gets ahead of you, so I think that's what you're referring to. You can actually come across as a wonderful romantic person, whereas you might be a jerk.
Sometimes you should ask, what about the other guy or girl? What does he or she think?
Right. Thank you.
Well, I would agree with the first part that writing does go to the world. Certainly, I think writing is about ideas, and ideas are about changing the world or maintaining the status quo, whatever it is. But writing is about generating ideas which can cause good or can cause bad. Can cause evil also. I think we cannot say that all writing is definitely good. Writing has the capacity to inflame passions and do other stuff as well. But when it comes to the personality of the writer, unless he or she is writing an autobiography, I think the two should be completely divorced. Many times, I face this problem that many times people read my books and say, how can you as a diplomat write a book like this which is slightly critical of India or whatever? I said, no, this is nonsense. Who the person is writing should have no relationship to what the book is about. The book should stand on its own. It should not matter that, a domestic help has written this book or a PhD in anthropology has written this book. The book should stand on its own. That's what I do. It should have its own merit or demerit, as the case may be. But it should not be, unless, as I said, it's autobiographical, then of course it's intrinsically linked to the personality of the author. And many times people do say that, your first book is very autobiographical and a lot of you seeps into the book. It was not the case for me at all. But many people do say that. So, if that is the case and the author has disguised himself or herself, that's for the reader to figure out. But I personally believe that there should be no correlation between the book and, and the author. Co-author.
Thanks. I think Akhil has something to do as the originator of that comment, that quote.
My personal belief is that who I am as a writer is very different from who I am as a person. That when I'm sitting and writing, I need to be a very good person to create writing that's very good. And by being a very good person, I mean somebody who has sort of the qualities of great honesty, the qualities of compassion, the qualities of self-doubt. So I mean, to me I think that who I am when I'm sitting for those 5 hours writing is different from who I am, outside of it. Like outside of it, I'm an ordinary human being, and I get irritated if I'm sort of pushed around in the train. I'm angry at this other person. So I would agree with Anne Patchett that I think that her statement was not as refined as it could be, but I think that when you're who you are when you're writing, who you are, the writer is almost directly represented in the writing. That's been my experience.
I want to ask you a follow-up question then, because I also was, your first book, the first novel, is An Obedient Father, and it's about a man that was sexually abused his daughter, and there's a big theme of guilt, and you said that guilt is an emotion that drives you as well. So can you speak a little bit, can you elaborate a little bit on that, on some of these deeper, darker emotions that may drive our writing?
So my first book, An Obedient Father, is about a man who molests his daughter and then becomes sexually interested in his granddaughter. To me, part of what it means to be a writer is to bring compassion to people who most people would not offer compassion to. It's easy to love the lovable. It's hard to love the people who are not lovable, whom we want to turn away from, whom we want to see as monsters. And so to me, part of being a good person when I'm writing is being willing to approach this person who behaves in monstrous ways and trying to approach this person with compassion. In terms of deeper emotions, I sort of feel we all have deep emotions. When somebody we love dies, we become very tender. We all have deep emotions. We oftentimes don't pay attention to those emotions because we have to live our life. And so, in some ways, as a writer, I think of myself as a writer as somebody who grew up sad and in very difficult situations, and because of that, I had sort of these emotions that I didn't know how to deal with, and the only really healthy way that I could find to deal with them was by trying to convert them into something meaningful. Because if you're just unhappy, all you do is you make other people unhappy. I'm unhappy, so let me bother you. And I didn't want to be that type of person.
It's wonderful. And that actually makes me intrigued about your writing, Shovan, because yours is, you want to bother people, right? As a political satirist, I think you, in a competent authority, I think it's the characters that we don't want to be compassionate toward. We want to sort of poke at them. Can you elaborate on why you see that as your role, and what draws you to that as your role in society? We don't have much political satire these days, and so that's really useful.
Well, it was a public service, really. Because I'm a very public service. It's the way I was raised. My parents had certain values, and so I was trying to help other people. And I noticed that all these government circulars and notices and pretty much anything that's printed, usually on bloc matrix printers or typewriters, they say by order of the competent authority or as per instructions of the competent authority. And I started thinking, supposing he's an actual person, and that would explain a lot, because when you look at the complexities of the 3G scam or various other things, it doesn't look like the potential beneficiaries had the brains to figure those things out. How would they know? What clauses and sub-clauses to put in. So there's somebody who's figuring out, and it seems like his name is the competent authority. I thought, suppose he's like the Phantom, which is that every few years, like he changes. So sometimes he's the cabinet secretary, and sometimes he's the in the PMO and sometimes he's an officer on special duty, but he's always there, right, lurking in the shadows and controlling everything. And I thought the public needs to know about that. You know, so, this is very bad because I'm sitting right next to a government guy. But he's nice. He's a nice guy. He's so passionate in front of people. Income tax rates will be sort of delayed.
That brings me to this notion of writer's block, right? Not because I want to block what you're saying, but I was wondering, how does that play out for you? And we were having this really interesting conversation before this about how writer's block could also last 11 years. And so, how does writer's block happen? Does it happen to you? I don't know if it really happens with you. I'm intrigued by that. So let's start with you. Where has it ever shown up?
Well, when you write your novel in 2 months, you don't have any possibility of writer's block. And what was when we published was my first draft. So really, the whole thing was just in my head, and it was just waiting to come out. And I wrote strictly on weekends. Monday to Friday, I was political counsel in the High Commission in London. I would go to the office. The second Iraq war was happening. I would report on that. Come home in the evening and do my research and write on the weekends. And one weekend I did 20,000 words in one weekend. So,
everyone hates you here, right?
I know. Even to me, that looks unbelievable now, that how could I do this in 2 months, but I actually did it in 2 months. After that, you can get lucky only one. The second novel took 1.5 years, the third novel also at the same time. But I think the first novel, you have the advantage that you write unself-consciously. You don't really have any template against which to measure that. You don't have too many expectations. BBC asked me in an interview, Mr. Swaroop, when you were writing this novel, could you visualize it as a film? My answer was, I couldn't even visualize it as a book. What are the first-time writer, what are the chances that it will even get published? So I think that was the advantage of being a first-time writer, and I wrote this in 2 months. But then I wouldn't say that I have never had writer's block. Sometimes you're sitting in front, I'm sure Akhil and Shubham have had the same experiences. You sit in front of a blank computer screen, and you just don't get the words that you need to fill up that screen, and you wrestle with it, and then I think it's time to take a break. The good thing is, I don't see myself as a professional writer. I don't see myself as a full-time writer. I never accept a contract which has a clause that you have to deliver a novel by 2015 or something like that. I don't want that sword of Damocles hanging over my head. So I write when I have the urge to write, when I want to write. I have always seen that when I force myself to write, the next day when I realize it's utter crap and I have to delete it kind of thing. So for me, the important thing is when you are wrestling with something, to me it means that one of my characters is telling me something. That maybe you are trying to force the character into a particular direction, and that character is now saying that sorry, I will not do that, what you asked me to do. I think that's the great thing about writing, that you invent a character and then that character becomes a person, and that person starts talking to you. So I think writer's block to me is really one of your characters, unless of course you're starting off with a totally empty slate and you really have no ideas,